everyone. My name is Davis Johnson. I'm joined here with the anti-accidental team, which consists of myself, Josh Schrock, and Matt and Mark Herringshaw. And today we're going to do a little bit of a dive in on what is called the Headwaters Process. This is something that we get asked by many friends and family and those who have attended one of our Headwaters retreats, just what are you guys doing? And so we thought it'd be useful to take one of our weekly team meetings to just kind of gather around and have a little bit of a 411, do a little deep dive on what this process actually is and how we got into it. And I'd love to hear from part of the team, Josh and Matt, eventually hear of just how we got involved. But before we do that, Mark, if you wouldn't mind, you're the wisest, smartest, and best looking one here. Just give us a little bit of like, hey, how did we get here? What is the Headwaters
Yeah,
process? And we'll go from there.
this really started, I guess, with me and some crisis in my own life. I went through a really significant health issue a few years ago. I had a heart attack and went into cardiac arrest, and my heart stopped for 23 minutes. And I came out of that. All kinds of experiences were wrapped around that, but I came out of it with a real yearning to re-examine my own life and to look really deeply at what configures who I am. And so what we've done is um, we've tagged along, I guess, that experience that I've been on, and we use an image of going upstream. I'm looking out right now out of my window. I live in Aiken, Minnesota, and I'm looking out at the headwaters of a little river called the Tame Fish Lake, flowing into the Ripple River. And that river winds down 30 or 40 miles and it pours into the Mississippi River. And we use that image of going both downstream and upstream of the river. And if you follow, of course, the Mississippi, you get up to Itasca, which is the headwaters. And it's a very beautiful place, very pure and pristine. And there are a lot of different streams and rivers that pour into the Mississippi. In fact, in the whole Mississippi system, there's something like 250,000 tributaries that pour in to that river. But you go to the source, you go up to the top at Itasca, and it's purely itself, right? It's just its essence.
Hmm.
And we look at the journey ultimately that God has for us, which is to press through all the peripheral aspects of our lives, the things that we wrap around our identities, the tributaries that pour into us. And many of those are significant and they're a part of us. The schools we went to, the occupations that we've embraced, the different understandings of our own history, our family, all those are significant, but they're not our essence. And if we're going to live out of a true purpose, the journey really requires us to move past all of those secondary aspects of contributions that others and God has made into our lives to get back to really the essence. So our journey is really to go there. And ultimately, what we find when we get to the top is that our deepest desire is to engage directly with our Creator, with God, and that's what we find when we get up there. We get to the headwaters. So we've choreographed a bit of a process that follows that. That's what the retreat is about, and about articulating in our own words what we sense God has created us in our essence. So in the short of it, that's what it is. We're building a community around this experience, and it's been significant for each of us, and we're inviting others into that process.
And I know myself personally, Josh and Matt, we all three have benefited tremendously from encountering this process through you, Mark. And I know selfishly, the three of us have just kind of want to come around you and go, how do we give this away in a more condensed form that doesn't take years of mentorship or, in Matt's case, growing up in the same household for several decades for this to be distilled down. Some of us take a little bit longer to get this stuff. But I would love to hear from you, Josh and Matt, just kind of what piqued your interest? Why do you want to get involved in this Headwaters process and kind of where do you feel like we're heading?
It's a great question. For me, it was nepotism, I'd say. Uh, Um, but yeah, it's been really fun to watch my dad post heart attack,
Hmm.
just ask and answer bigger questions than he was considering before. So I've had a front row seat to that, and how that's impacted my family, um, not just me and my siblings, but grandkids, my kids. Um, And it's forced me now to go, man, I don't need to wait till I'm 55 and have heart disease to answer some of these bigger questions. I can actually start in my 30s.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, Mark, Dad, you've been a big champion of encouraging me to really live that out, work that out. And this process has been a big time catalyst for that.
And you guys are not the only father-son duos we've seen come through the process. We've had several of those already at retreats, which has been really
Yeah,
rewarding.
Yeah.
so cool.
How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I can go real quick. I mean, for as long as I can remember, I've been asking the bigger questions. I don't think people encounter me and think like he's just such a deep thinker, but there has been this like deep internal dialogue and a passion to both understand how I'm uniquely wired, which has sometimes been all encompassing and maybe asking the wrong questions. I only stay there. It's been interesting a part of this process to kind of even go beyond that, to understand my kind of universal essence and finding some rest and that not just kind of beating up this question of what am I to do in this life? And I'm an eternal optimizer. And so I get stuck in that loop sometimes of like wanting to always make sure I'm connected to the core and doing everything right. And
Hmm.
but this process has been just it's been a source of rest for me. I'm so motivated to move, like to build, to push things forward. And at the intersection of this work, I think it's interesting of an ascent to the headwaters. So naming, clarifying, understanding our true essence, but not staying there. It is constant work. We're constantly going back to the headwaters. It's not a one-time experience, but and then from that, the way that I'm uniquely wired out, I love to move. I love to kind of push things forward. And my encounter with other coaching or therapy, it felt there was just friction because I could sense it was not connected to my core, to my true essence. It was kind of from maybe more of a place of shame or fear. And I love this balance of like understanding my true essence and also going downstream, becoming more of that true essence and exploring what am I capable of? How has God uniquely wired me, and how can I uniquely add value to this world from my core, but also exploring, adventuring downstream. And this context has helped me do a lot of that thinking and brought a lot of clarity.
Yeah.
I love that. And I was the last to the party, last one on the bus, but felt the nudge from God after meeting the three of you and just saw so much similarities in the ways that we're wired and how all of us are really interested in that idea of going upstream to that place of clarity, and really asking kind of the bigger questions that affect everything else downstream. And so within the process itself that we've developed, the first click down, we would say, from the actual headwaters of purpose is what we would label motivation. What actually makes a human being tick? And I want to give a very practical tool away in today's webinar, which is called our motivation code. This is a tool that we deploy actually at the retreat, but it's one that, for me personally, kind of changed my relationship with the many personality assessments that are out there. I used to be one of those that was less inclined to care for personality assessments, but then I took the MCODE as a result of meeting Mark, and it pinned me to the wall. It explained and brought language to so much of my experiences and really what gets me out of bed in the morning. And it feels, again, just a little bit more upstream of most personality assessments. And so if we think of the Headwaters process, we can put it on the screen here as at the very top, the headwaters themselves, what would be the Lake Itasca of every human being. What we find up there is what we call purpose. Synonyms with this would be desire as well as meaning. Like, how do we make sense of all that is within a human being? And again, one click down from that would be motivation. And so, with that, Mark, I'd love to just pass you the
Yeah.
ball and a little bit more about the kind of the resume of MCODE. How did you get involved with it? Where did this thing start? It didn't get invented by us, but we are certainly reaping the reward of the hard-earned efforts within this amazing assessment.
Yeah, it's really a wonderful instrument. In the whole Headwaters process, we have multiple kind of guided experiences that we walk through. We look at our life map. We look at the influence of family upon who we are, the different nurturing elements. But as Davis is unfolding here, motivation is a very deep and universal sort of code at the center of us. And this particular assessment, motivation code, was actually created by a guy named Arthur Miller back in the 1960s. Great story. He started at NASA. He was one of the social psychologists that were brought in. They had hired all these brilliant engineers who are going to try to get man to the moon in 9 years, and he had to herd the cats and try to get everybody, channeled together and get all of those incredible gifts focused. And he had a particular thesis. He was a believer. He had a worldview that human beings are created with a purpose, and embedded in our stories and our own narratives are the kind of master keys for what drives us. So he developed a biographical process where he interviewed these individuals, these brilliant engineers, over a period of several hours. It took a long and progressive process where he pulled from them their greatest achievements in their life, times they felt that they were absolutely at their best, when they were in what now we would call flow state, in a point where like everything's just clicking. And he wanted to find out what's happening in them at those moments when everything like flows together. All of us have had that experience. If you're a golfer, you've had days that are just like total duffers and you just can't do anything right. And then other days you go out and it's like everything is just flowing. Or in your work, times when you're maybe trying to write a proposal or some aspect of a relational complexity you're trying to put together, when everything begins to just fold in place. That's called flow state. And what Miller was looking for were the actual times in someone's history when that was happening. And he documented that. And then he pulled from them questions. What is it that's driving you to that activity? And over time, in collecting those stories, the happy ending of the story is we did land on the moon, at least if you believe that's not a conspiracy. and Miller was a little part in that whole journey. Well, from that grew a whole business called SEMA, a system for identifying motivational abilities is what they called it. And over the next 50 years, they collected like 1 million achievement stories all around the world. He trained biographers to do this process. And about 25 years ago, I actually had a friend who was trained in this and took me through my own SEMA process. My wife, Jill, also went through that amazing experience. But they really couldn't scale that. It wasn't really feasible. The time commitment was just too massive. So the group that eventually landed with the IP after Miller passed away, they created an automated assessment using an algorithm online that puts together the same sets of questions that he asked about similar stories. And you start with this narrative: where have I been at my best? And then you ask and answer certain questions. What's going on inside? What's driving me toward that activity? And there's 32 human motivations that have been identified. And what MCODE does, it's the only narrative assessment out there. It's validated statistically stronger than most of the assessments that you've heard of. It's a very, very valid instrument. And it orders those 32 motivations in a unique pattern that statistically no other person in the world, in history, could ever have exactly your motivational order. And that makes it an extremely personalized assessment, unlike other typologies. Like if you take Enneagram or Firo-B or DISC or Myers-Briggs, those are all types where in Myers-Briggs, you're one of 16 types, for instance. Well, in MCODE, you're one of, 20 billion potential types. And virtually there's no one else that's ever going to have your order with your level of strength in those motivations. So it's a very powerful personalization assessment. And what it shows, particularly if you look at the top motivations, it shows what is it that gets me out of bed in the morning? What's the intrinsic motivation that drives me? That's a really important thing to understand. How have I been wired by my creator? We use an analogy. It's like the hydrogen that's in water, right? There's tremendous power in every glass of water. If we could just get the hydrogen out in an effective way. Right now, we haven't really figured out that atomic process in an efficient way. When we do, we'll have limitless energy. Well, we all have this bottled up energy that's pent up within us that we can't get to. And that was Miller's thesis, is if we could tap the hydrogen that's inside of us, that nuclear fission-like energy, it'll elevate our abilities. And what we found, actually, as we've studied this, the group I was a part of was doing research on MCODE. a strong correlation between flow state, what we were talking about, and working within your top motivations. So identifying what those are and then aligning our lives with an understanding of our purpose, our essence, and then aligning that to the things that truly drive us and motivate us. It's a tremendous asset in helping us access parts of our hunger and our desire that maybe we haven't been able to access easily before. So MCODE's a big part of what we do, along with several other kind of unfolding projects and assessments and ways of sort of looking into our lives. But motivation and the motivation code is really, front and center of what drives us, understanding what drives us. So.
Yeah, and if we think about most personality assessments that do exist out there, they do exist kind of downstream. If we think of our process, at the top we have purpose, then motivation, and what we call engagement, and then productivity followed by profit. And most assessments exist kind of within that engagement and productivity. Kind of how do you show up? What are your strengths when you're working with others? How do you participate in a team? What does stress look like when you're working? And we want to say, hey, before those things happen, you actually have those itasca headwaters, those things that are flowing constantly within you. And so if you go
Right.
upstream and discover those, they can illuminate a little bit more of why those other personality assessments can be useful. And I know personally, it made me a little bit softer on those other. I wasn't so like, oh, these aren't helpful. They put me in a box. Instead, they gave a little bit more explanation by going upstream, which again, we think brings clarity to so much of life.
Well, I mean, everybody wants to be more productive, and we'd say, well, then we need to be more engaged. Well, how do you do that? Well, find the true motivations that are embedded in us, that are tied to our purpose, and then life begins to flow downstream because we've gone upstream.
Yeah. And when you take this is a test you can take online. I think it's $20 and an $80 version exists for a little bit more of a full report. And for me, when I took the test, it wasn't like a lightning rod moment when you get the results. Instead, what had happened is we do what's called an impact session with people who are going through the process where there's a listening taking place of where do these motivations show up. And then based on that, we're able to kind of diagnose what we could, again, call this motivation flow. If you've played any sports, this is what Mark was talking about with regards to the flow state. That place where you find you're just self-forgetful. You're just so absorbed in the task that's at hand. It's almost as if God created you to do the thing that's in front of you. That's what we mean by flow state. And getting clarity as to what inspires you to get involved with something, what keeps you going when you're facing obstacles, what is the end result, bringing a kind of a sigh of relief that this task is indeed finished. When you get clarity on that upstream, it does lead to downstream engagement, productivity, and ultimately profit. And so, like Mark said, it's one of many tools that we like to deploy at the retreat itself. But I'm curious, even hearing from you, Mark, as well, but Josh and Matt, how have you seen just the motivation code show up in your life or in the lives of others who have shown up at the retreat? What's this kind of doing in people?
I think as you described it, Davis, as this light dimmer rather than a lightning rod moment, that's been so true for me. I notice what I look for, but now that I've been actually made aware of what my motivational pattern is, um, I start to kind of look around for that pattern. And sure enough,
Hmm.
it shows up time and time and time again. And it's really predictive too. Like when I think of a new opportunity or I'm presented um, with something new, I now kind of have this overlay of my motivational pattern that I can put over top of it to go, hey, with you know with relative with relative foresight, can I actually guess whether or not this is going to be motivating for me?
Hmm.
And that's been really helpful. Um, my foot in the door, my prompt motivation is to explore, and so that's just again, I look around and I see that all throughout my life. I've just been on one big quest, one big journey to explore the next thing. And at times that's been frustrating. At times it's been really fruitful. But now I can start to kind of see why that pattern continues to show up and why it ultimately leads to the most satisfying things in my life um, when I do say yes to that motivation and follow it down the rest of the path. So.
It's very explanatory. That's really, really helpful. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I just thinking about the process, if I see motivation where it exists on this process, to the degree that I'm aligned, I understand my purpose. I'm living inside of my core motivation. The rest is just kind of, in a sense, made effortless. It falls into alignment. I'm more engaged with the work that I'm doing, where I am. More of me is present, not straining my way forward, but it's like it's more natural. And if that's the case, then productivity goes up. It's not a forced thing. I think that's what's been really interesting to me, to the degree that I'm clear on this motivation code, and that the work that I'm doing, the way that I'm showing up in the world, if it is connected to that natural flow, the rest of this stuff downstream just tends to happen. And I'm not saying like, profits just out the roof, it's like, but I will say though, work especially feels more effortless,
Mm.
feels more natural. It doesn't feel like I'm straining or striving my way forward. And kind of tying this into the anti-accidental language, like it is something for me as a trigger to say, shoot, okay, this is I start feeling like I'm forcing work rather than working inside of the natural flow, the natural way that I'm designed to work. It just gives me those kind of early alarm bells like, hey, this is off. This opportunity is not something I should pursue because I know what's downstream of that. And it's an indicator for me of like helping me see when I am in or out of that flow. I love it. I use it. I mean, I use the language, the tool, probably weekly. It saves me a lot of time for sure.
Yeah, I know for many people who are in a line of work that maybe there isn't a change on the horizon, the M code can be something that can offer very practical handles to hold, just with regards to the tasks that I despise in my job. How can I deploy what I know to be true of what makes me tick and change the way I'm approaching something that otherwise would take the wind out of my sails? For others who have come to the retreat, we've actually seen how the M code has been so explanatory, so illuminating that they've actually changed jobs outright, just into different careers because they felt like that was something that God had for them next, and they had the ability and the essentially wanted to take a bet on themselves. And if that energy was endless within them, they knew they'd always be able to get out of bed and keep going. Mark, maybe from you, you're the one who's been probably most experienced with M code. What are some other stories, or how do you see this showing up in people's lives? Are there patterns, or are there things that are just more out of the box that just kind of make you go, there's something to this thing. Not only is there science behind this, but there is
Yeah.
experiential story.
Well, it's I think anybody that's taken the assessment and then gone on through to maybe have someone help interpret it, as you mentioned, the impact session, has seen an impact also on their relationships in their lives. And we've seen like real impact in marriages, in parent-child relationships. Understanding myself, of course, allows me to, with a new level of imagination and kind of empathy, to start to imagine, well, what's motivating the other people in my life, and maybe I can understand a little bit more why their behavior is what it is. It allows me to make the choice, as we suggest at the very end of the retreat. The very point of going down the river is not to fulfill our own purposes. At the end of the day, it's a surprising twist that we're actually sent out, you know, on that mission downriver to be a hero in somebody else's story, like to go and find ways where we can come up underneath other people's purpose and their vision and mission in life. And that's where we find ultimate purpose. So MCODE is a wonderful kind of master key for unlocking not only ourselves, but helping us imagine and make choices to serve other people's motivations and purposes. Which, if you're a follower of Jesus, that's the essence of success. You want to be great, be the servant of all.
Hmm.
You just gave away the punchline. We have nothing to sell anymore.
We gave away the tool, we gave away the punchline. Now, if you're interested in learning more about not only what happens upstream, but all the tools that are kind of in the tool belt of anti-accidental, Josh, Matt, myself, we really taken it upon ourselves to come around Mark and again just distill the wisdom that God has given this sage of a human being. And we've packaged it into a very powerful retreat. It's something that all of us are really big believers in. And we'd love to invite you to the next one. And so if you want to come check it out, you can find more information at antiaccidental.com. We'd love to see you at the next one.
Oh, can I add one thing, Davis, before we jump off? It's just this quote from C.S. Lewis that I think sums up well what we're attempting to do. And it's this: if you're on the wrong road, progress means doing a U-turn and walking back to the right road. In that case, the most progressive man is the one who turns back the soonest.
Hmm.
Uh, And I think I'm sure we can all agree with this. There's been many times in my life where I've realized, man, I'm on the wrong road. And that's shown up differently in different times, in different moments, and it's manifested in different forms. Um, and there's been times for repentance, and then there's been times where, man, I know I should be doing something else with my time, with my energy, with my resources. And I just am so thankful that I've spent time, and granted, a fraction of the time that I'll spend throughout the rest of my life actually dealing with the question of what is the headwaters in my life, because that saves me a lot of time downstream. Um, and I think I can confidently say, since engaging with this, I've spent less time turning around and finding myself wasting time or wasting resources. And so just encourage you, if you're listening, if you've made it this far and you have any inkling or any sense in you, I'm on the wrong road, whatever that means to you, encourage you guys at least talk to one of us, engage with us. We would love to help you answer some of those questions. Is turning around and making a journey to the headwaters of your life worth the investment? So sorry to get the final word, Davis. You were signing us off and I butted in, but um, I did want to get that in. So appreciate you guys listening and we will talk with you soon.